Side lighting, which we saw in the last lecture, is windows in a wall. Top lighting, which we're going to look at here, is windows in a roof. And often it's something we call a skylight. One of the advantages of top lighting is that you're not limited to a narrow building footprint anymore, like you are with side lighting. Your building can be broad, it can be wide, it can be flat, no problem. The limiting thing now is that light only comes in on the top story, wherever that is. Might be a one-story building with skylights on the top, might be a multi-story building where you can only light the top floor. And then with skylights, recall that there's the possibility of having heat gain in the summer. An atrium is a big enclosed space. Think of the Atrium building in downtown Eugene that has that, if you've ever been there, where the building department is. It has that big open area with tables and chairs. Or think of the Genzyme building that we saw when we talked about passive cooling, that multi-story research facility near Harvard. That was an atrium. If you have a small atrium, like we see here, you just call it a light well. So they're both enclosed spaces that let light in from above. An atrium is bigger, a light well is smaller. And it's common to see light wells in these buildings up in Portland that were built in the late 19th century, early 20th century. For example, here you're looking at the White Stag building, so called because it used to be the White Stag Clothing Company, and there was a white stag, you can see it here, a white stag leaping across the top of the sign. Well, the University of Oregon has bought this building, and it now houses the Portland wing of the architecture school, and I believe it's LEED something or other for LEED existing building. They have kept some of the features, including light wells. So these were part of the original building. They let light in to the inside of the building when you don't have electric light. This beautiful building is on the University of British Columbia campus up in Vancouver, BC, and these are all photos of the same building. The small photo on the right shows this building from the outside, so you can see there is a glass wall for side lighting. What you see in the two middle photos is the top lighting. And what you see in the left photo is what it looks like in this big atrium space. And again, this building is super popular with students on the campus. And a lot of students who are not life sciences students come here anyway to study because it's just so pleasant and mentally stimulating. It's a beautiful space. This is another building on the UBC campus, University of British Columbia campus. It was built in the late 80s or early 90s, before LEED was a thing. And what you see in the overview picture of the lower left is that in the middle of the building there's this, I don't know what you would call it, this tower, this atrium space with a glass dome on it. Here in the upper left you see a view of that atrium space with the glass dome overhead and surrounded by side lighting. And that is a very pleasant lounge area. The other two photos along the right show what the building is like. These are offices, so these are all office spaces. And there again we have the problem with user education. So somebody has turned on these lights. They don't need to have those lights on. I took these pictures and I was walking around in there, and when I walked around in this hallway here, there were no lights on here, and you can see that is very light and very pleasant and just a great place to have an office. Here again is the Lillis Business Center. I show you this again because we mentioned earlier that it has not only side lighting, but top lighting. So here in the section view in the center of the page, you see some tilted skylights, Clerestory thingies. There's a skylight. And then here on the second floor, you see how some of that light comes in. Here is the Genzyme Center that we were talking about a minute ago, that research building near Harvard. And so through the middle of this building is the atrium, and some of the photos that you see on this slide show you what the lighting conditions are like in the atrium without the electric lights on. And you notice that it can be a multi-story building and still function with side lighting and top lighting. We need to be careful with skylights. You've seen this slide before. It talks about the danger of heat gain in the summertime when you have sun beating down straight from overhead. Yes, I know skylights can be insulated and double paned, but still it can be a problem. You just have to be careful. The guideline, I think this guideline about floor area is from Herbert Lechner, saying that if you're going to use skylights, don't make them any bigger than 2 to 5% of the floor area. So if you had a 10 by 10 foot room, that's 100 square feet, your skylight should be no more than 5 square feet, preferably 2 square feet. But there are alternatives. One alternative you may have seen in the home building, Jerry's and Home Depot and so forth, is this thing called a solar tube, also known as a light pipe or a light tube. And what it does is sit offset at an angle so that light comes in, but it doesn't blast straight down into the room. It comes in, it bounces around and reflects on the light-colored inside surface of the tube. Here's a market that has used reflectors. So yes, there is a skylight, but you can see what happens is the light comes in and bounces back and forth on the inside of this reflector tube before it comes down and bounces off another reflector down here, sort of a bent sheet metal thingy. You can see that here in the photograph. And this one is unusual. This is at the University of Minnesota. This is the mining engineering department. And as is appropriate for a mining engineering school, many of their classrooms are down underground. And what they have done, what their architect has done, is look at the photograph in this glass enclosed tower up here. Now look at the drawing. There are heliostats, and a heliostat, as I say at the bottom of the slide, is a reflector. It's a mirror that reflects sun and directs it in the direction you want it to go. So this building takes in sun. The sun hits those heliostats, which track with the direction of the sun. They bounce back and forth down through this tube until they come down to the bottom there and create some pretty good light. Now, another way you can avoid having skylights and overheating is to use Clerestory windows. And a clerestory, you will recall, is a window in a short vertical wall near the roof. So it's a kind of side lighting, but it's near the roof. We saw Clerestory windows in this Zion National Park Visitor Center. You can also find Clerestory windows on monitor roofs. And a monitor, as we see in this bottom drawing, a monitor is just a lifted up section in the roof, and you can have clerestory windows on each side of the monitor. Or you can have a sawtooth roof, as you see in the top here, with sloping roofs and the provision for multiple clerestory windows all facing the same direction. And if you would like to see a nice example of clerestory windows for top lighting and side lighting, think about the Market of Choice grocery store at 29th and Willamette. You've probably seen it before. And you can probably guess by looking at this photograph which direction is south. That's right. It's this long raised up clerestory window that's pointed south. You can see these shade devices on the south side of the window. They're sized appropriately so that in the winter, when the sun is low, sun will get in through those windows and help provide heat for the store. In the summer, when the sun is high in the sky, both those shade devices and the roof overhang block the sun so it doesn't overheat. And this photo on the left is a photograph taken from the inside of the market, looking at what that clerestory window does for the lighting inside. Across from this clerestory, there's a second floor balcony with tables and chairs, and they just let people go up there and hang out. So you could buy food in the market, or you could bring your own food, doesn't matter, and sit up there and look down over the grocery store, but also just see this light streaming in through the window. It's very nice. I hope you go in there. All right, so now we'll go look